The wind moves through the narrow streets of 18th century New York, carrying the smell of ash and the sound of church bells. The year is 1741, a cold winter turning into spring, and the city is smaller than most imagine. A busy port with wooden houses, crooked lanes, and the uneasy rhythm of footsteps that belong to people who do not trust one another. At night, the harbor flickers with lanterns swinging from the masts of ships that come from the Caribbean, from England, from Africa. The taverns are full of voices, merchants, sailors, indentured servants, enslaved men and women, all living side by side, yet divided by fear and power. It is a city that calls itself civilized, but underneath its cobblestone heart beats something restless. Whispers of rebellion drift through the taverns. The British Empire worries about Spain. The colonies worry about the enslaved people who now outnumber free men in some streets. In the eyes of the wealthy, every shadow looks like a threat. Every spark looks like the beginning of a fire, and then a fire truly comes. March 18, 1741. Flames burst from Fort George, the center of colonial government. The alarm bells ring and soldiers rush to save what they can. The blaze eats through the wooden structures, sparks falling like angry stars onto the snow-covered ground. People run, shout, pray. By the time the smoke clears, rumor has already spread faster than the fire itself. Someone did this on purpose. Someone is trying to destroy New York. No one knows who. But fear does not wait for proof. Over the next weeks, more fires appear. A stable here, a warehouse there, a hayloft bursting into smoke. Some say they see dark figures slipping into the alleys. Others swear they saw enslaved men carrying candles, or sailors whispering near the docks. Truth and imagination melt together until no one can tell the difference. In the taverns, men speak of conspiracy. In the markets, women pull their children close. The city that was already divided by class and color now feels like a powder keg, waiting for a single spark. Amid the confusion, one voice will rise, a young servant girl whose words will decide the fate of dozens. Her name is Mary Burton. She is 17, poor and invisible to the people she serves. Yet in the coming months, her testimony will turn the entire city into a courtroom, and her whispers will become the loudest sound in New York. Before this story ends, more than 100 people will be arrested. 13 will hang, 70 will vanish across the sea, and historians will spend centuries arguing over whether any conspiracy ever existed at all. This is not just the story of old New York. It is the story of how fear becomes truth, and how truth disappears in the smoke. Slow heartbeat sound fades in. The morning after the first fire, smoke still hangs over the harbor like a dirty veil. The governor orders patrols through the streets, and soldiers question everyone who happens to look poor, foreign, or simply frightened. The people of New York do not need evidence. They need someone to blame. Rumors gather like storm clouds. Some say it was Spanish agents, jealous of Britain's power in the colonies. Others insist it was the city's enslaved Africans, plotting revenge for years of cruelty. A few whisper that the Irish servants had joined them, drunk with anger and cheap rum. Every theory fits the fear of the teller. Days later, another blaze breaks out. Then another. A stable burns, then a warehouse, then a roof in the center of town. The smell of smoke has become part of the air. Men sleep with buckets by their beds. Women lock their doors before dusk and listen for the next alarm. The city feels haunted, not by ghosts, but by suspicion. At the taverns, the talk is ugly.
"They mean to kill us all," someone shouts.
"They'll burn the town to the ground." Voices agree, fueled by ale and imagination. The idea of an organized uprising takes shape. Enslaved men rising at night, setting fires, murdering masters, then joining enemy ships in the harbor. There is no proof, but the story is too thrilling, too frightening to question. The city's leaders form committees to hunt for conspirators. They promise safety in exchange for information. Those who speak will be rewarded. Those who stay silent will be suspected. In an instant, honesty becomes dangerous, and betrayal becomes currency. The jails fill with prisoners, black men chained together, white servants accused of knowing something. The cells are damp, the air heavy with fear and the clatter of irons. Some confess to anything just to end the questioning. Others are beaten until their answers sound useful. Then, amid the chaos, a name appears again and again in the whispers: Mary Burton. A young maid, Irish by birth, working in a small tavern owned by a couple already under suspicion. The magistrates summon her. At first, she refuses to speak. She is frightened, surrounded by powerful men demanding truth that may not exist, but they promise her freedom, money, even protection. Slowly, she begins to tell a story, one that grows with every retelling. She says she overheard talk of rebellion. She says enslaved men met in the tavern cellar, plotting to burn the city. She names names. The judges lean forward. The scribes dip their pens. Each name becomes another arrest, another headline, another victory for the fearful. By now, spring has warmed the city, but no one feels safe. The fires have stopped, yet the panic burns hotter than ever. A preacher stands before his congregation and warns that the devil has come to New York. The newspapers write that the colony itself is at war with evil. Executions are discussed as if they are ceremonies of cleansing. Trials begin with more witnesses than evidence. The gallows are built high and visible, so that justice can be seen from every street. The crowd gathers, half terrified, half hungry for drama. The first men to die go quietly. Others shout their innocence as the rope tightens. Somewhere among the spectators, Mary Burton watches, a girl whose words have turned into smoke rising from the square. The officials call it order restored. The merchants call it peace. But in the houses of the poor, and in the quarters where the enslaved once slept, the air is still heavy with dread. The fires that began in the fort have spread into the hearts of the people, and no bucket of water can put them out. The courtroom is small, the windows nailed shut to keep the noise of the street outside. Inside, the air is thick with heat and the smell of sweat and ink. Judges sit in tall chairs, their wigs powdered white, their eyes fixed on the girl standing before them. Mary Burton, 17 years old. Her hands tremble as she takes the oath. At first, her voice is barely more than a whisper. She tells the story she has already told the magistrates, that she heard men speaking of fire and revenge, that she saw candles carried through the night, that the tavern where she worked was the center of a secret plan. The judges ask for names. She gives them. Dozens. Each one is written carefully into the record, as if ink could make fear real. Outside the courthouse, crowds gather to hear the news. The accused are marched through the streets, some chained, some silent, some crying out that they have done nothing. The people do not care. They need villains. And the more the girl speaks, the more villains they have. Mary becomes a symbol. The newspapers call her the brave servant who saved the city. Clergymen praise her courage. Yet at night, when the lanterns are out, she cannot sleep. She knows that the story she told has begun to live a life of its own. It grows every day, shaped by the expectations of men who demand more names, more details, more blood. The truth has become a performance, and she is trapped on the stage. In the jails, prisoners whisper to each other through the walls. Some beg for mercy. Others decide that confession is the only way to live. The line between truth and survival blurs. A few claim that they were part of the conspiracy, hoping that cooperation will spare them. But every confession leads to another accusation, and the circle keeps widening until no one feels safe. The city clerk writes that the trials resemble a fever. Every day new witnesses arrive. Every day the judges demand proof that never comes. The Reverend John Urey, a schoolteacher who can read Latin, is accused of being a Catholic priest working with the Spanish. He is arrested because literacy itself has become suspicious. In frightened cities, knowledge is dangerous. The executions continue. 13 men are hanged. 17 others are burned at the stake in the square. A ritual meant to purify the colony, not by fire of justice, but by spectacle. The crowd cheers and prays, convinced that God watches from above and approves. Yet when the smoke clears, the city does not feel safer. It feels emptier. Weeks pass. Mary Burton is called again and again to testify. Each time she hesitates longer before speaking. She senses that the men who once protected her now see her as a tool that can be used and discarded. If her story stops being useful, she will lose the only power she has ever held. By midsummer, New York smells of salt and heat. The fires are gone, but the fear remains. The government congratulates itself for saving the colony. The merchants return to their trade. Ships sail from the harbor carrying sugar, tobacco, and a few prisoners sold back into slavery in the Caribbean. The city tries to forget, but forgetting is never complete. Years later, a few citizens will remember the faces of the executed, the echo of their protests, the uneasy silence that followed. They will wonder if any plot ever existed at all. Historians will search the records and find contradictions. Witnessing